From the Opopco Studios in Oklahoma City, you're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell. Time for our inbox. We take questions from your emails and answer them here on video. Today we're going to talk about Oklahoma State's surge, OU's defense, whether a defensive player might win the Heisman this year, and let's start with this one, Barry. This one comes from Jerry. Jerry says, with Maryland's defection to the Big Ten, does West Virginia wish they had been the ACC replacement rather than joining up with the Big 12? Conference realignment once again in the headlines.
Well, the answer is sure. West Virginia would prefer to be in the ACC. It makes much more geographic sense. They have some history, primarily with Maryland, with some of these schools in the ACC. But the truth is the ACC didn't want West Virginia. Had some academic snobbery looking down on West Virginia, and then West Virginia took its athletic department elsewhere. So I think West Virginia is pleased and proud to be in the Big 12, and in a perfect world, yeah, West Virginia fits in the ACC. But that was a marriage that wasn't going to happen, and West Virginia now says good riddance.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You know, you have to, with conference realignment, you really have to look at what's happening in the here and now, and they saw a chance to get with a conference that looked like it was maybe heading towards stability, and we now have a much more stable Big 12, even when West Virginia joined. I mean, look at these TV deals that have now been struck, and just that long-term financial stability that those provide the Big 12. I think West Virginia definitely feels like it made a good choice, and the ACC, while really a good basketball conference, Barry, I think it begs the question, how long can they survive on basketball? They have to get some football bubbling up, not just the top couple teams. They really need to bring it football-wise, and right now we're not seeing it from the ACC. All right, back to the inbox. This one from Mitch. Mitch says, I'm not happy with OU's defense, and not many people are, but is there an overreaction? What do you think, Barry?
I think the answer is no, there's not an overreaction. I think OU's defense has taken on water for whatever reason. Now, yeah, there were some positives. I thought OU's defense exerted itself in the fourth quarter, turned Clint Shelf into, back into a pumpkin to a certain extent late in the game. But 3 straight weeks, the OU defense has been completely torched at West Virginia. A little bit of alarm against Baylor, and then Oklahoma State had its way with the Sooner defense a good part of Saturday. That, to me, is very alarming for a defense that played very well early in the season. So I think there is cause for concern, especially since next season could be a rebuilding year. All the defensive linemen are gone. All 4 tackles, most of the ends. I mean, it's going to be a rebuilding job for that defense next season. This is the year they should have been better.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do think that it has gone the wrong way for the Oklahoma defense, but you look at who they're playing, part of it is the offenses have gotten better later in the season. Mike Stoops said that actually a week or so ago, said if you look at their schedule, it was the tail end of the season that you saw those really high-powered offenses. But I also think Jason Kersey, our OU writer, made this point the other day, that they might have gotten too cute with the 7 defensive backs and no linebackers and some of the things that they did against West Virginia, and even 6 defensive backs and 1 linebacker against Oklahoma State. Hey, they played Texas Tech pretty darn well just playing their base defense. Maybe get back to that, playing linebackers, playing a normal number of defensive backs, and see what happens. Maybe it's still as bad, but could it be any worse? I don't think so. All right, let's go to the inbox, and from John. John says, do you feel Manti Teo's season superior to the one that Ndamukong Suh had in 2009 or Roy Williams had in 2001? I think this question is just for me to try to get all these names right. I, for one, think not. How would you rank Heisman-worthy defensive players that you've seen? That's a good question, Barry. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I have to admit, I am not an expert on Teo. I mean, I know he's the leader of the Notre Dame defense. I know they got a great defense. I know he's a great player. I don't claim to know a lot of details about his excellence. But I will say this. Roy Williams, I think, would have been a worthy Heisman winner in 2001. Ndamukong Suh, a worthy Heisman winner in 2009. The fact that they didn't win it should not eliminate Teo for this reason. When you have a revolution, which a defensive player winning the Heisman is a revolution, you got to take small steps. You got to have small victories. Getting into the discussion, getting into the top 5, getting invited to New York, those are small victories. Maybe we've just set the table with Roy Williams and Ndamukong Suh for a guy like Teo to win it. I hope so.
Yeah, and you know what? I think he may not be more dominant than those other two were. I mean, I think Ndamukong Suh and the way he could dominate games from the defensive line, I mean, I don't know that we'll see. I mean, we'll probably see another player like him, but you just wonder if we'll ever see that kind of dominance again. But I think the difference, at least in my mind as a Heisman voter, I always have to look at team success. I know they say best player, but in today's era of college football, winning all your games is vital. You have to do it to be in the national championship picture. And Notre Dame did that, and they did it largely on defense, and they did it largely because of their leader, Manti Teo. Right now, he's at the top of my Heisman ballot. I will look at everything, scrutinize everything before I send that ballot in next week. But I got to tell you, their undefeated season and his major role in that, to me, are two really important things. I don't know if he's going to win. I know there's a lot of surge for Johnny Football down at Texas A&M. But I tell you what, he's got 2 losses on his resume. If you're going to look at the big wins, you got to look at the losses too. And when I do that, I put Manti Teo at the top of my ballot. All right, lastly, this one from Jay. Jay says, we may be witnessing the beginnings of something big in Stillwater and vitally important in Norman, the emergence of a true rivalry. Has Bedlam become the new Nebraska in the Big 12? Has OSU become the new Nebraska in the Big 12? Barry, what do you think about that?
Well, it's a great question. The answer is no if we're talking about the Nebraska from the 70s and 80s. But here's what's interesting. In the Big 12, in the Bob Stoops era, the Sooners have always had 3 rivals. The tradition-hate rivalry with Texas, the conference rivalry with Nebraska, the in-state rivalry with OSU. Well, when Texas joined the Big 12 and then Bob Stoops got here, all of a sudden the Sooners' new conference rival was their old hate rival, Texas. Mm-hmm. And Nebraska sort of shifted to the background. Now what's happened is Oklahoma State has exerted itself. The last 5 years, the 2 top teams in the Big 12, 5 years, has been Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and they're separated in the conference standings by 1 game. That 1 game was in overtime last Saturday. They entered that game with the same conference record. I think OSU has made tremendous strides in becoming the new conference rival to the Sooners. Texas will get back, so it's not going to be the old OU-Nebraska rivalry. But I do think Oklahoma State has become a rival more than just an in-state. They've become an equal in terms of conference superiority, conference championship contention. Oklahoma State is now in there competing with the Sooners. And
I think that the Sooners, the players and the coaches, I think they recognize this. There may still be some Sooner fans that want to put blinders on and say, oh no, this isn't a big rivalry. But you got to take those blinders off, folks. Did you see that the way the players and coaches reacted to that win? Yes, it was in overtime, but I think that was also a recognition of how tough a game this has become. They went to Stillwater last year and got beat, and they nearly got beat by the 3rd-string quarterback and the rest of the Cowboys on Saturday at home. So to me, Oklahoma State has really taken big steps in the last couple of years. We continue to see that. I don't know if a loss can be considered a step, but I think we clearly see that Oklahoma State is right there. Even though they've had all those injuries and all the problems that they've had this year keeping guys healthy, they were still in that game, Barry. We saw one of the best bedlams we've ever seen. I think it's definitely a rivalry that's going to continue for a lot of years to come. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.